All right. I'm here with Ede Fox. I'm so excited to have you on the Unlock the Sugar Shackles podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we briefly met at KetoCon. You were a speaker, I was a speaker, and we met at some fun after party sponsored by BioCoach, and I'm wearing their shirt right now. And I've been wanting to talk to you about your journey. And so I'm really glad that we got to connect. So I know that you have an incredible journey of healing autoimmunity and some other things with a carnivore diet. So can you walk us through that journey, kind of how you found carnivore and how it changed your life?
Yeah, absolutely. I began with keto actually, and I have always struggled with my weight, and my weight reached an all-time high in 2015, and that's a whole long story in and of itself. But I finally decided enough is enough. Now is the time to deal with my weight and to deal with like constant aches and pains and the exhaustion and just everything. And so I decided I started on a keto diet, and it really was working like superbly. I couldn't believe that I lost so little weight and yet lost so much pain and, joint aches and inflammation and all of this stuff. And so that really made me curious, like, what is this way of eating? Like, what is this all about? And I kind of dug in and really did a lot of study to try to understand more about this way of eating. And so over time, like I got really excited about keto, and over time, as I was losing weight and looking better, people were like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I started to tell people, but I mean, I'd say to people, "You can't eat any bread or pasta or cake," and they'd be like, "Oh, no, I can't do that." Yeah. So I continued on keto, and I participated in the like low carb keto space, and I was continually educating myself, but there were certain benefits that I saw other people getting that I wasn't getting. And I couldn't, I wanted to, kind of understand that. And I kept hearing about, people talking about the zero carb diet, because at the time that's what people were calling it. And so I finally decided to give it a try. And I started with ground beef and butter. I don't know why I thought that was the way it was supposed to be, but that's what I did. And on day two, I felt so amazing that I was like, this is it. This is where I'm gonna be the rest of my life. And I figured I would cheat or fall off and whatever, but this was always gonna be home base. This is what I was gonna go back to as a way of eating. And I didn't even understand then why it was working so effectively. Now, I will say I started that at the end of 2017, beginning of 2018. But at that time, my asthma was at its all-time worst. I had to go to urgent care twice. I was just unable to breathe. And,
Wow.
they put me on a nebulizer, while I was there, just so that they could listen to me breathing, because I couldn't breathe enough to listen to.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I know it was bad. It was really bad. And they put me on prednisone and Advair, and just basically a
Albuterol.
bunch of steroids. Right. Yeah. Well,
Mhm.
I had the albuterol, which is the emergency inhaler, which I was using multiple times a week. So it's clearly
Yeah.
I'm not well controlled because it's supposed to be for emergencies, not like just like getting through life.
Yeah. I was
So
actually there at one point too. It's funny that you say that. Yeah, I was there too
yeah,
with
yeah,
constantly. I was on all those meds as well. Not fun
yeah.
times.
Yeah. And I didn't even really know. I mean, even before the asthma, like I've always struggled with allergies, asthma, and eczema. And, if you out there are suffering from this, you know that those things generally travel together. So if you have one, you probably have the others. So I have always, been like taking Benadryl around the clock and Sudafed around the clock. And then when I discovered Flonase, I was like, everything is working. Had no idea that this was a steroid, and I was on it for years. No idea. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So, I just was like, I couldn't live without those things. And even on keto, I couldn't live without those things. Like I was taking Benadryl around the clock for years, and you know how like dopey and sleepy that makes
Oof.
you. I mean, imagine
Yeah.
how like trying to do that over and over again. So, so anyway, I went carnivore. Things were great when I was doing the beef and butter fast. And then I, started reintroducing like all the things, including dairy and cheese. So I still felt better than on keto, but I wasn't feeling as amazing. And uh, I don't know, I think my internet was about to almost conked out. Did I freeze?
I could hear you. I could hear
Oh,
you.
okay. There's a massive storm coming and the sky is like gotten really dark. So I don't know. I may lose
We'll
power
push through.
altogether.
We'll push through.
Yeah. But in any event, let's see, what was I saying?
You were
Um,
saying that you were taking all those meds and you didn't feel as good when you were on keto. You were starting to feel a little bit better with the beef and butter.
Right. So going carnivore and just having the beef and butter, I felt a lot better. And then I wasn't feeling as great when I added back in like coffee and dairy and all of the other stuff. So in the zero carb community, as they called themselves at the time, they really did say you have to test dairy. You can't just assume that it's okay for you. So I
Mhm.
decided to take it out and to test it, and it was stunning. Like it made such a huge difference. So I took out the dairy for about 10 days. The first day or two, it was like, oh my God, how am I going to live without cheese? And then day three, it was like, cheese? What? You know, so it
Did you
was
still do
fine.
dairy? Did you still do butter or did you take
I
out butter?
I took that out as well. I wanted to be, super careful and super clean about it. So I took that out as well. And I went 10 days and then I had a small portion of cheese, and within an hour I needed my rescue inhaler. And I mean it was so
Wow.
clear. Yeah. But
Yes.
of course I was like, no, wait, no, no, not my dairy, not my cheese. So I was like, let me really do an experiment. And I was like, okay, I've got so many puffs in my inhaler and so many ounces of cheese. So let's go. Let's see how this works. And I did it 4 more times, super careful about it, really gave myself a lot of time for the inflammation to come down and all of that. And just every time. So at a certain point, I had to say, as an adult, my only job is to keep myself alive. So I can't, continue to do something that I can clearly see is causing a tremendous amount of damage. So that was the last day I ate cheese. I think the last day I had cheese and pepperoni, like, cooked in the oven so it got crisp. And I fell asleep shortly thereafter. And I remember I was having a dream that I needed my asthma inhaler. And then I woke up and realized I needed my asthma inhaler. And then I was like, oh, that's it. So
What
that
a
was the last
story. Oh my
dairy.
gosh.
Yeah, yeah. So that was the last dairy I had, and I haven't had any since. And people ask me all the time, "Oh my gosh, don't you miss it? Blah blah blah. What about raw cheese?" And I'm kind of like, once I found a solution, I wasn't really interested in experimenting anymore. So for me, you weren't there those nights when I was like had to sit up and just every breath was like a battle, just to be able to breathe. And I was counting down the minutes till the urgent care center opened up. Like, that's how it was for me. So once I found an outlet or an out, or a solution, I'm done. I don't need to mess around with it
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah. It's not like it just gave you like a mild stomach discomfort. It was causing you to feel fear for your life and need,
Yeah.
actual urgent care and medications that are having these side effects. So absolutely, when the pain is that great, we're really driven to change. But for a lot of people, unless the pain is really that great, a lot of us are not going to make those changes. And I myself fall into this category with the dairy elimination because, like you mentioned, having to give up dairy for so many of us, there's this grieving period that we go through, right?
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's not
Mm-hmm.
cheese. I actually happen to not like cheese. I know a lot of people can't believe it. But dairy is still my favorite food group. I like butter and ice cream and yogurt. Oh my goodness. I used to eat yogurt every single day. And
Mm-hmm.
yesterday I had some, it was the weekend. I went out to celebrate with my wife and I did have some ice cream. And so this morning I woke up and I had a little bit of some allergies. I was sneezing, my nose was running a little bit, and I thought it was the sugar. And now that you're saying this, I know in my heart it's the dairy because I don't tolerate dairy either. So it's just another reason to, eliminate. And because it doesn't make me do something so crazy, I'll once in a while celebrate and indulge, but to have that barrier, I don't do that with gluten, for example. It's just, we have those hard limits and it makes it easier, right? To say no to something. It's not like, oh, just one bite or something like that. So anyway, I hear you with the dairy elimination. A lot of us can be in denial because it's so good. It's so addictive and it can make things like the texture of things. There's nothing that compares to it, right? All those substitutes, they don't do it. So anyway, please continue on with your story. So you figured out the dairy was the huge factor triggering the asthma. So do you still struggle with asthma?
No, totally. I've not used my inhaler. I have not had a single problem since that day.
Amazing.
So,
Amazing.
I think I need to turn on the light. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
It's super dark. I guess the storm is not passing through. Okay, I hope this helps. Yes, here we go.
Perfect.
So, yeah, I was, and I also wanted to say that I think that it is hard for people to, cut out the cheese because they haven't made that connection in their minds. And I never would have imagined that asthma was where the cheese expressed itself because I've been lactose intolerant. And frankly, I never liked dairy all that much. I mean, as a kid, when I was 8, I hated milk, and I said at 8, I'm never drinking this again. I never ate cereal, didn't like ice cream. Like, I don't generally like milk things except for cheese. So I just kind of, and so cheese would upset my stomach if I had too much of it. And certain for sure, well, I don't know, I never even really drank milk, so I assume it would have upset my stomach. But when I went keto, that stopped happening. And I think that was probably because keto alone was enough to heal my gut, significantly so that I could have it without there being a problem. So I assumed because I wasn't having stomach upset that cheese was not a problem. And that's why I kept saying when people in the community were like, no, you gotta test it, you gotta take it out. I was kind of like, it's not, it's no problem. I used to have a problem. I don't have a problem anymore. But I did. I just didn't make the connection as to where it was. And I think, dairy could be a problem for a whole host of problems in your body. But until, you only know, I mean, your body knows its weak points, and that's where your problems with dairy will express themselves. But the only way to know that is to take it out, see what happens, and then, and bring it back in and see what happens. So I feel like 92% of people do better when they take out dairy. 8% like have no response at all. And then the 92% of people, probably 80% have, a modest decline in, in feeling better and in health. And so it's kind of up to them to decide, okay, I'll be a little more sneezy today and, whatever. But then there's a smaller percentage of us who like have this massive problem. So
Yeah. Wow. What a good
mhm,
thing to figure out. I mean, and this
mhm,
is one of the incredible benefits of a carnivore diet because they say it's like that ultimate elimination diet. You're taking out everything. You're just having beef. And after you took out the butter, did you use ghee or did you use something else?
So in the beginning, I was really concerned, and and I am a person who has tons of allergies, as I said. So growing up, I mean, from birth, I was allergic to soy. So the doctors, and this was unusual to be said, like I was
Yeah.
born in 71, and the doctors told my mom, she's allergic to soy, so you can't give her formula. So fortunately, I was breastfed. But I was allergic to, I'm sure I was allergic to soy, and I was allergic to corn, which is in everything. So I was
Mhm.
constantly exposed to it. And, I just had a lot of allergies. So when I came to carnivore, um, and another thing, eggs, in my life, I have gone long periods where I couldn't eat eggs. They made me super nauseous and kind of sick. So right now, eggs are okay, but I'm like super careful. I don't want to overexpose myself because eggs are an amazing carnivore thing to eat and, super easy meal, and I don't want to mess that up. So that's
So,
kind of how I felt about butter. Like, let me use it strategically. And I took it out for a good 6 months. And then I only brought it back in the form of ghee because I figured taking out the milk proteins, taking out something else. I now have regular butter, and I feel okay. I don't feel like I've noticed a difference, but I am also not one of those people that's using, one or two sticks of butter a day. I definitely am using it for flavor only, not to supplement my fat.
got it. I
Hmm.
am over here smiling because it is just wild to me that I've never met someone with such a similar health history. So I I didn't have allergies from birth. I started developing them after I got my tonsils out when I went to college. But I was allergic to everything, and all sorts of, not foods, but I was allergic to everything in the environment. And I had to get so many allergy shots. I moved down to Miami and I was allergic to palm trees. I was allergic to all these different trees and grasses. I was like, this feels like a cruel joke. I had to get all the shots. Did you ever do shots?
No.
The allergy
Mm-mm.
shots. I had
Mm-mm.
so many of those. I was giving myself 5 shots every other day in the stomach. I mean, it was crazy. So I was also super allergic to so many things, on all these medications, also taking like on the Advair and the albuterol and the Singulair and all those. And it's funny, I was also really sensitive to eggs. So I figured out at one time in my life, I was really sensitive to eggs. I'm sensitive to dairy. You're making me rethink the butter. You're making me rethink, if I have that little reaction to having a little bit of ice cream, what is it doing on a smaller basis? So we have these
Mhm.
continual daily assaults, and they are just keeping the immune system just enough activated that it's dampening the immune response and also causing low level inflammation in our bodies every single time we eat it. So whether it's enough for our bodies to mount a huge response, maybe not. But the reason why your body did after you took it out for so long was because your immune system had a chance to kind of regenerate, because you weren't
Mhm.
kicking it while it was down every single day by having little bits of cheese, little bits of butter. So then your immune system was able to be like, hey, I freaking hated that. Don't do it again. And so you could hear the response of the immune system. So the same thing's kind
Mhm.
of happening. So we all have to go through these checks and balances, right? Even health practitioners and health coaches, we are still, food is delicious. We want to believe that we can keep having butter. I mean, who doesn't want to eat that? It's like a staple, but perhaps it's not doing me very, very good right now. And the body can heal itself. So sometimes these food sensitivities can go away. Like right now, I'm able to eat eggs again. But my symptom with eggs was that I would get, on occasion, when I would eat them, I'd get extremely tired. Like you said, you fell asleep after
Mhm.
the cheese. I was like, oh, she was probably really tired after that. That's also a symptom of a food sensitivity, right? And so we could
Uh,
get really exhausted. And so now I'm also, just in my mind, I had eggs earlier. I was a little tired after I ate them. I'm like, I'm not having eggs for a whole week because I need to give myself that space from it, or else the body, which once when it once sees something as a sensitivity,
Mhm.
it can really easily redevelop that sensitivity. So just as you're being really careful with the butter, you're being careful with eggs because they were once a sensitivity for you. That's a really great lesson that you want to be careful with those foods. You don't just want to go ham and eat them again because it's very likely that it could
Mhm.
redevelop into sensitivity. So a lot of shared stuff here. How funny is that?
I know, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
I only buy a dozen eggs, once every couple of weeks, and then I try never to have more than two eggs in a day, and and not really do them back to back, day after day. So
perfect advice.
yeah, but I just pay attention too. I mean, this is one of the things that I love about the carnivore diet is it has made me so much more make me pay attention to my body. And so, what I always tell people who are following carnivores, once you take the sugar out and all the processed foods, you remove all the noise that keeps you from being able to hear your body. And the way that our bodies communicate with us is, this tastes good, this tastes bad, this seems appealing, this seems disgusting, this makes me feel good, this makes me feel bad, and that's it. And so once you start listening to those signals and actually respond to them, then you are in partnership with your body and with building health. And so when I eat foods, especially when I eat foods that I think might be, sensitive, like bite by bite, I'm like checking in with my stomach and checking in with my gut and just different parts of my body. Am I feeling anything? And this is what I did actually even before I went keto long ago. Like when I would eat cheese, my stomach would be like pretty vocal, and like bite by bite, I would take a bite of whatever the cheese or ice cream was, and I'd listen, and I might get 3 bites in, sometimes I'd get 8 bites in, but eventually my stomach would just do a little something, and I'd be like, that's it. That's the end of the line. So
Yeah.
now I do that all the time with everything that I do is just listen, and those signals will present themselves. Our bodies are always speaking to us. It is just a matter of our listening.
Absolutely. That's such a good point. And that's one of the things I teach my students to do. It's like dial into how you feel. I talk about testing blood sugar all the time, but I always say your symptoms are going to override whatever the number says. A lot of people are like, oh my goodness, I'm sweating, I'm panicking, my heart's beating out of my chest. I feel like I'm gonna pass out, but my blood sugar says it's normal. Who
Hmm.
cares what the blood sugar says? If you feel like you're
Hmm.
on the brink of death, that is a legitimate feeling. Like a lot of us will sort of outsource that decision to like a doctor. Oh, that's fine. Or
Hmm.
we try to get rid of those symptoms, right? We'll take Advair, we'll take inhalers, we'll take ibuprofen. I mean, there's all these memes on the internet like I live off ibuprofen and these jokes about, oh, you're over 30, so you're like sponsored by Advil. It's like, well, why why are we suppressing what our body is saying? Sometimes we need to, right? Just to get by, because we can't figure it out right away. So there is, of course, a time and place for medication if you can't figure it out. However, we need to know that those symptoms are our body's way of communicating with us, and trying to understand them instead of quiet them is really how to get
Hmm.
to figure out what's happening. And so I
Hmm.
love that. I like that saying that carnivore cuts out all that noise. And I've recently started doing much more carnivore than keto, just as a trial, just because I like to switch things up. And my gut's not been super happy, and my sleep has been amazing ever since I started this. I'm like, oh my goodness. So it's really cool the kind of changes that can happen. And, I'm still eating healthy foods when I eat keto, or if I'm doing carb ups, it's always healthy foods, but it's amazing how differently our body can react and what it's telling us that it wants. So right now I'm going to go with that and kind of let
Hmm.
it lead by example. So after you kind of figured out, this stuff with the asthma, was there anything else that healed? Like, do you have any more in this journey of carnivore? Like, sort of fill us in the rest of the way with what happened with your journey.
Yeah, I mean, so many things change on carnivore and things that you don't expect or you're not thinking about at all. I would say for me, the first thing that I notice and that most people notice is like my mental health improved dramatically. So I just felt happy all the time. And in the past, how I felt in the day depended on a million things. What time my alarm went off and what I ate for breakfast, how much I weighed on the scale, what my clothes looked like, what the weather was like. Any number of things had a huge impact on my mood and how I interacted with people and all of that. And then when I went carnivore, everything just evened out. My baseline was happy and I'd never experienced that before. I just felt fine. And most days in the past, like there was always some ache and pain or something I was trying to ignore. There was always something. So I never just felt fine. It was just like I just was trying to ignore things. But now it's like nothing hurts, nothing is a problem. I feel fine. I felt much more emotionally resilient. So, things that were troublesome or difficult when I was, following the standard American diet were no problem at all. Once I, started eating this way, I didn't feel, I didn't like collapse into tears over, missing the bus or whatever. So that was an amazing change, and generally, like brain fog, gone, much more mental clarity, and just a lot more interest in life. I don't know if that's the right word. Like I had the bandwidth to now like participate more actively in life. And that was something, I wasn't expecting any of that. I started this because I thought, I was going to lose some more weight, and this was not none of this stuff was on my mind. And then so there was that, and then I just generally like all the inflammation really really bottomed out. I felt just amazing, and I had an opportunity I think to heal because I did keto for a long time and it worked. It was great in some respects. It brought down my insulin, but because I was still eating a lot of dairy, also I was having nuts and lots of seed oil, which is definitely a problem, for me specifically. I still think I was very inflamed, and I wasn't doing optimally at all. So going carnivore, and by the end of my keto, journey, I was basically saving my carbs for wine, chocolate, and nuts. So, it wasn't like the healthiest keto, if you could say. So going carnivore, and taking all of that out, it was just like, a total reset. So, at a certain point, I took out coffee, all the alcohol, all dairy. And, for like 6 weeks straight, like all I could do was like sleep. But then when I finally woke up, it was like, wow, I am awake in a way that I've never been before. And yeah, so it was pretty spectacular, and
Do you
and
think
I can't speak highly enough about it.
Yeah. Do you think that was a little bit of a detoxing period that you went through after you took out all
hmm
those keto
hmm
danger foods?
Well, I think alcohol really, it really messes with your sleep, and I think it creates a sleep deficit, and
Yes.
also caffeine. So removing those both, I was super tired. I mean, I wasn't tired, I was sleepy and trying to replace missed sleep. So it took about 6 weeks because I think I was that far behind. And then once I, hit it, then it was like, wow, I'm awake. I'm fully awake. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I'm glad that you listed those. So I wrote these down as you were talking, and the keto danger foods. So these are things like alcohol, chocolate, nuts, dairy, vegetable oils, coffee, sweeteners. So all of these foods are technically keto. I would say with the exception of alcohol, but people, well, no, because
hmm
technically it's low carb or whatever. But these are certain foods that a lot of people just don't do well with. And some of them, the vegetable oils or some of those sweeteners, they really don't have any nutritional value that they're adding. However, don't we find that, this is, maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but isn't it easy for us to sort of be like, oh, let me lean on these foods because I'm, having an emotional eating and I can't eat a cupcake, but I'll, go buy some macadamia nuts and some, dark chocolate or Lily's chocolate or something. So we have these tendencies to emotionally eat. So then we'll still be eating foods that are perhaps inflammatory for us, even though they're not terrible and they're much better options. But when you do carnivore, it kind of takes out that option, right? And so you're just left with, well, nothing to emotionally eat here if I don't want to eat a steak. So it kind of cures that right away, right?
Well, I wish completely.
Yeah.
So there are foods that I call my carnivore candy. So
Oh,
things
let's hear
like
them.
so pepperoni is one of those things for me. And, pepperoni is fine. You can get the fancy stuff that's, imported from Italy, whatever. It is carnivore, but I know when I'm going for it, if this is fun food,
Yeah.
it's not dinner, it's like an entertaining activity. So instead of, munching on M&Ms in front of the TV, I'll, munch on pepperoni, slices. So this is
That would be
something that
me with prosciutto. Oh my gosh. That
yeah,
stuff is like, yeah, it's so
yeah,
good. It's like
yeah,
kryptonite.
yeah. So these are things that I still work on and struggle with. And, and I think that now that I am carnivore, like I, used to see a therapist, and in my former life when I was still working in public service, I actually hated my job. I had um, well, it was just a horrible, horrible work environment. And so I was going to a therapist, and I also was, eating like terrible food and drinking alcohol and, and not getting enough sleep and all of those things. So, I was going to therapy, but really what needed to happen was, that I ate better and quit my job. So I didn't do those things. But now, in retrospect, I see that, changing the way that I ate really, it doesn't solve mental health problems, but I think it gives you the space to actually implement some of the things that you might learn. So, people are always talking about cognitive behavioral therapy, and I think that can be really awesome. But if your head is so foggy and clouded by all the sugar and you physically feel bad, it's hard to mentally feel good when your body physically feels bad. Physical bad feeling tends to create a bad mood. So it's hard, and you can't use cognitive behavioral therapy to outthink, the pain and arthritis pains and joint pains and plantar fasciitis and all the other things. You can't outthink that. Like, you just have to stop eating those things. But once you do, then you have this amazing tool that allows you to have better mental health. So, some of the things that I learned then that I couldn't implement at the time, I'm now able to implement, and I feel, just like a much healthier person.
Yeah, that's great. And I love that you're talking about the mental health piece because there's been these studies. I don't know if you saw it circulating on Instagram over the past week or so, but they're saying that depression is not a chemical imbalance, but that it is really an inflammatory condition. And it's the presence of these inflammatory cytokines affecting our brain. So the fact that you went on a carnivore diet, you reduced your inflammation in your body and had a much better mental health. And you said you had more bandwidth to participate in life, more interest in life. the depression, one of the symptoms is like apathy. Nothing appeals to you. So you had the literal reversal of those types of feelings. And so it's not surprising everything you're saying, because it's literally proving the point of that this depression, those feelings are driven by inflammation. And so just like you said, if someone is super inflamed because of they're eating a diet that is inflaming them, living a lifestyle that is inflaming them, and they're depressed and they go to therapy, how much better can you possibly feel when every cell in your body is not allowing for that? So it's like you're working with your physiology instead of despite it. And so that is super powerful. And that's the same thing when you steady your blood sugar. A lot of people have anxiety. And one of the biggest things from steady blood sugar is having less anxiety. They're like, oh my goodness, I was on every anxiety med that my doctors could think of that was ever created. And they said, since I started working with you at balancing my blood sugar, I haven't had any anxiety. And it's incredible what comes from the body, what symptoms can be caused because of food. And I think that, when you're talking about the allergies and the asthma, for some people, that's surprising to find out. And it was surprising for me at first too, like, oh my goodness, what I'm eating is causing all of this. But when we think about it, it makes so much sense. And so I'm really glad that we're having this conversation, because there are plantar fasciitis. I'm assuming you're saying that because that was one of the aches and pains that you had. Yeah. I had, not surprisingly, because we have all the same symptoms, recurring tendonitis in my ankle. And I would go to physical therapy all the time. And when I changed my diet, I never got tendonitis again. And I was like, how can that be connected? Something in my ankle is connected to what I eat. Of course it is. Like, our whole bodies are connected and to each other, and everything we eat, and every single cell comes from the food that we eat, and we have a bloodstream. It carries these things throughout our whole body. So amazing point. I love that. So I didn't mean to cut you off there, but thank you for sharing that.
No, I think these things are, it's super important to recognize this. And I didn't know about that study. So thank you for sharing that. And I'm definitely going to check it out and share it. I mean, I definitely feel like, when I look around at my peers and I look around at the world, I see people who are really struggling with a lot of anxiety, depression, mental health stuff that I feel like, doesn't need medication. Just changing the way you eat can make such a huge impact. And and for me, like, I like coffee. I love coffee. I do. But I do, when I take it out, I can see a very big difference in my sleep, in my ability to balance my electrolytes, and in anxiety. I have a lot of anxiety when I drink coffee. And I don't know. I mean, so I recognize that, and this is one of those things where I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna, be anxious. But if I didn't know that, though, I would be like, okay, I got to get some Xanax or whatever they're using to overcome this, substance that I'm drinking that I could just as easily, stop or moderate.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's such a good point. And yeah, caffeine and coffee can be one of those things that, unfortunately, I mean, for a lot of people, I have them titrate slowly onto a Swiss water processed decaf. And so that just means that we're not using a chemical to make it decaf, which wouldn't be good. So I personally do a decaf because I just love the taste of coffee. It hasn't been something that I've ever experimented with giving up. Now you're making me like push my own boundaries. Ede, I'm thinking hard. So maybe I'll do it. I just got a brand new espresso maker. I'm not ready yet. This is our process. Maybe next month I'll be ready. But the caffeine is another one that's really triggering for a lot of people. So if you struggle with adrenal issues, you have blood sugar crashes, you have anxiety, you have high blood pressure, high blood sugar, caffeine is one of these things that can be a huge contributor. Just because some people can drink it, some influencer out there and like, look, I have a perfect flat line on my CGM. It doesn't mean that's how it's going to react in your body. And we can be sensitive to anything, any part of a food. So it doesn't, allergies happen to proteins, but sensitivities can be any part of a food. And you might be, for example, sensitive to like coconut milk, but not coconut oil. So it could be these different minutia. And so there can be a sensitivity to coffee and caffeine. So it's something, and of course, remember that it's a very highly sprayed crop. So we always want organic. So that's another thing. If I have inorganic coffee, I'll be really shaky and trembly. And it's just simply from all those pesticides because, my body's now super sensitive to everything. Right.
Well, maybe that's me because I am not getting the organic stuff. I'm getting, something that tastes good, but it's
Yeah.
what stuff I'm talking about. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. That could be an issue for me as well. So definitely something to pay attention to.
Right. And so if you're going to do a
Yeah.
reintroduction, so if you're, listening, if you're on carnivore, maybe start with an organic Swiss water processed decaf, AKA just go to Whole Foods and get that, the ones there, because those are, or you could just type those into the search bar and find a coffee that fits that description and try with that, because that would be the cleanest, almost no caffeine. And so that would probably be your best chance of tolerating it if you wanted to have it on occasion. But I like the idea of being able to eliminate things that don't work for us. So I wanted to talk about the health disparities that we see in communities of color and metabolic diseases in the Black community. I know this is an issue that's near and dear to your heart, but it is a growing issue. And it's also near to my heart because I want to be an advocate for all people, but especially those underserved communities. And I don't think that as this carnivore keto community, we're doing a great job of reaching everyone who needs to be reached. And I personally want to do a better job of reaching Black communities. And so can you talk to us a little bit about those disparities?
Yeah, so just in my family and the people that I know and the communities that I know, diabetes is just rampant. So everybody who at a certain age, everybody's either pre-diabetic or actually diabetic. And, it has an innocuous sounding name. People call it their sugar. If you talk to the older, generations in the Black community, people say, oh, well, my sugar is high or, my sugar is acting up. But, they're talking about a chronic and progressive disease that is incredibly damaging. And there are statistics showing that in the Black community, even when uh, even when in comparison to white people who have diabetes, even when you control for income and insurance and all these types of things, Black people with diabetes get amputations significantly more than white people. So it is a problem, and and the end result is losing limbs, losing life. It's a really big deal. So that is why it's something that I really want to talk about, and I don't think it is talked about enough. Certainly not in the Black community. How this high levels of insulin are connected to prediabetes, diabetes, heart disease, and hypertension and stroke. So these are all conditions that are very prevalent in the Black community, but we're told that these are just, it's part of our genetics, and that just simply isn't true. And I want to talk about more plainly that I think this is actually an example of the racism that is sort of inherent in the medical community. So when you look through like the literature and at diabetes, one of the risk factors for diabetes is Blackness. And so it basically is sending this message that Blackness is ill health, And that just isn't true. This is a dietary condition. But if that is your perspective as you are treating Black patients, then, you're not really going to pay much attention to dietary changes, or you might assume that your patient isn't going to be open to, willing, or it's not going to be as effective, so you may as well give them medication. And so when I talk to the people that I coach and who are in my community, the stories I hear from them about their interactions with doctors are, they're terrible. Many are not even told that their blood sugars are high until they're in the diabetic range, and the doctor's like, oh, and by the way, here's your metformin prescription. But we just aren't given, I don't think that we're given great information about how to handle this condition, and it is having an outsized impact on our community and our health. So why I decided to call myself Black Carnivore and to talk about this way of eating, I wanted to make sure that any Black person who was looking for a way to improve their health and liked meat, that they had someone or a place that they could go to get information that would be helpful, supportive, and relevant for them. And you may or may not be aware, but veganism is, especially raw veganism, is like on the rise in the Black community, and at a higher rate than it is in the white community. So, but in my opinion, like, I'm not seeing it work for a whole lot of people. So, and I think that people are turning to it because they're sick and, they don't know what else to do, and we're being told that veganism is healthy and it's a great way to, get your health back. So if you, think you're sick and you want to try to turn things around, that's where you go. And so I think people are turning to it, not realizing that there is another option, that keto or carnivore might be more effective and more sustainable and something that they could enjoy and do in the long run. So I wanted to get this message out there, and I knew, when I first started carnivore, I didn't see anybody who looked like me. Whatever channels were out there interviewing people, they weren't interviewing people who looked like me. So I figured the best way to find other people who look like me is to name myself Black Carnivore, and any other Black person who's out there who's wondering, hey, is there anybody else who looks like me out there? They will Google Black Carnivore and find me. So in
That's
fact,
perfect.
right. So that worked really well, and a lot of people found me, and and they had a supportive community to to provide that support. And I think the the information that we're getting is well, let me say, I think that the carnivore diet is, the original human diet. It's good for the whole species, but what we believe about diet and our health is what can hold us back. And I think in the Black community, we have a lot of unlearning to do. One, that Blackness equals ill health, which is what we're told all the time. And I really want to encourage us to know that good health is part of our birthright. We have the right to it. It can happen, and and we need to start listening to our bodies and trying to and approaching health in in another way, because what we're being told is not working. So just leave it alone. And so that's what I hope to do. This is the message, that I bring out there. This is what, why I create content as Black Carnivore. And I think that, people do need to see themselves reflected. And this is such a, wildly different way of eating. I think it is incredibly ancestral, and this is how we have, eaten as a species for 100,000 years. But for the last 12,000, we've been caught up with agriculture, right? So what we're doing now is very different. And so when you want to do something very different, you need to see other people who are like you in some way doing it successfully. And so I wanted to take regular old Black people who are doing this and doing well and having success, and put their stories up. So it's not just my story, because I have a great story, but I'm one person, but having a whole range of people, so that if you're not convinced by some lady at work, maybe you would be convinced by your auntie doing really well, or the lady at church doing really well, or your cousin suddenly losing a bunch of weight and looking amazing and feeling great. So if you hear more and more of these testimonies, that'll be enough.
That's fantastic. And I love the premise behind it. And, I wish that it didn't have to be like that, but, this is the world we live in at the moment. And as someone who wants to help reach out, is there anything else that the white community can do to help support people of color and Black communities specifically in this endeavor? Like, how can our messages reach the people who need it most? These communities that are told that just because they're Black, that they're automatically unhealthy. I get chills when you said that. It's just such a horrible thing it feels so internalized, and it's just like a default. So besides, education, is there anything else that you can think of that would be helpful?
Well, I mean, I think amplifying Black voices, like just like we're having this conversation right now, and you're exposing me to a different audience that I probably may not have access to. I think that is incredibly powerful and incredibly helpful, and just sharing stories and sharing different perspectives is what's really important. And unfortunately, like, the algorithms are such that a lot of times
Mm,
Black creators often their content isn't shown to as many people because, I don't know, I guess the algorithm shows that perhaps not as many white people are interested in looking at content by Black people. I don't know. This is a conversation to have with YouTube, but there is a lot of discussion about the algorithm and whatnot. But I
yeah.
think that, since you do have a broad reach, making sure to amplify voices, to bring people onto your platform who represent a lot of different experiences and a lot of different voices is an amazing way to start. And then, I mean, as you said, talking about all the disparities the in medicine is super important. And and it's there. I mean, there's so much bias in so many different places, not only with race but also with gender. And frankly, I think women's health is in the dark ages.
Oh,
So
yeah.
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 So yeah, in so many ways. So I think continuing to talk about that as an issue and making sure that people are aware that not everything is perfect for everybody else out there. And yeah, so I think that is really what we can do, and maybe not battling with vegans. I don't. It doesn't seem like your style, but there's definitely a bit of that in the carnivore sphere, and I don't think it's helpful to engage with people that way.
Yeah, I live by the term block and bless. So if anyone, if an unhappy person who is a vegan comments something nasty on my page, then I just block them instead of entertaining. Because I mean, there are those studies that show with like even like cults where if someone believes something and it doesn't happen, it just reinforces their belief. Like, oh, the end of the world is coming, it doesn't happen. It made their belief even stronger. So basically what I'm saying is people they have their mind set up like made up
Mhm.
for, they're very strong in their convictions, and people are just yelling at each other. They're not really going to change their mind. The information's out there. So it's, I feel like on one hand, I'm sure it is worth it for some people who are maybe on the fence, but these people who are very strong in their convictions, it's like, I feel like maybe let's just let the results speak for themselves, you know?
Mhm.
So yeah, I don't really engage in that way. I'm not an arguer, but I fully agree with that sentiment.
Yeah.
Yes.
But this has been, this has really been great, and I will say that I think that the people who are drawn to me, it's really been an enjoyable community. The space that I've built, I've really enjoyed because it is a mix of lots of different types of people. It's not just Black people, and it's people from all over the world, from lots of different cultures, and I really do appreciate that. And I think that, my approach is, it's not dogmatic, it's very laid back, and it's really focused on healing and feeling better. And so people who are attracted to that message, those are the ones who come, and they've just been super cool and, just really awesome people. So in fact, I am now launching a private community that's not on Facebook, because I know a lot of my people also are not interested in being on Facebook.
Yeah, same
And
here.
yeah. And so I hope to continue that vibe there. And if anybody's interested, they can of course check out my website.
Awesome. And I think that it really speaks to just who you are as a person, the type of people that you attract. And you're such a lovely person, and your message and how you're not, super dogmatic about a message. And it feels like you're leading with your heart. And I think that that is going to attract an amazing group of people anyway. And I also feel like I have a great group of people from, all over the world, and, generally a lot of nice comments on my posts. And, as you get bigger, you get those, the internet's going to be the internet, but in general, just such beautiful people. And even at KetoCon, just the vibe in there was really beautiful. It was such a wonderful connected feeling that it wasn't any of this, ugliness that sometimes happens online. And the community can be so beautiful. And I think we do all have that same premise of, we just want to come together and heal and help each other out and be there for each other, because we know what it feels like to be in that really dark place. And I think that pain to purpose story, when that's what you're leading with, it really shines through. So thank you so much for being here and for sharing everything that you did today and your story. And where can people find you, and what sort of services do you offer? You said that you have that new community coming. What else do you offer?
Yeah, so I'm really excited. I'm sort of transitioning from doing mostly coaching to having the community. I will be launching a course shortly thereafter, just to help people kind of, I'm calling it a carnivore accelerator. So to just kind of fast track, because I think a lot of times, to be honest, there's a lot of conflicting information out there, and some of it will help you towards your goals, some will not. And different people have different goals. So the path to them, you need to personalize. And I think some of the information is not personalized for like the specific goal. So I really want to help people just like identify your goal, figure out the fastest path towards that one goal, and get going. And just create a community, a place to get regular support and that sort of thing. I will always have my YouTube channel. Love making videos, love putting that stuff out there. So you can find that at Black Carnivore. I'm also Black Carnivore on Instagram, and I guess I'm on TikTok, but I don't do it very much. But it's also
Same.
Black Carnivore. Yeah, yeah,
We'll
yeah,
get better with that.
and yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, so those are the places that you can find me, and yeah, I love making videos. So, I'm gonna be out there somewhere, so you can always find
Awesome.
me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I know we have a recording set up to do a little swap. And I believe I'll be seeing you in a few weeks at the convention that's here in Orlando. So it's in my hometown, so I'll be there. What's that convention called again? I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the name.
The Orlando Keto Summit, I think.
Yeah, the Orlando Keto Summit. Yeah, and you're going to be a speaker there?
I am not. I'm really trying to make sure I make it, but there was a death in my family, and
Oh,
I think we're having the funeral that weekend. So,
I'm sorry to
I've got
hear
to
that.
see. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it. It's been a very eventful last 3 months,
My
and
goodness.
yeah. But if I had not been carnivore throughout, yeah, I would have been a mess.
Yeah.
But
Well,
as
I'm
it
glad that
is,
it can help stabilize you so you can feel the things and not feel it even worse, but take some time to feel those emotions. And I'm so sorry for your loss. And I hope that we'll be able to connect again soon.
yes, absolutely. It was a
Uh,
pleasure meeting you.
yeah, thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.